In this video, I'm gonna start talking about the most used tools for modeling inside of Blender. Of course, you have much more tools to use and much more resources. Blender for modeling, I believe, is one of the most resourceful softwares to modeling. You always have some tool, or if you don't have a tool, probably gonna have an add-on to solve your problem. But in this video, I want to talk about the most used tools. Okay, the first that I'm gonna talk is extrude. So if you are in object mode, if I hit tab, I'm gonna go to edit mode. Here you can see that we are in edit mode, and here we can switch between vertex, edges, and faces. For extrude, you can extrude edges and also you can extrude vertex, but usually when you are modeling, the focus on extrude is on faces. So if I hit E, my keyboard, I can start keep extruding the faces the way I want. So usually you use a lot of extrude in the initial process of your modeling, so to start to get the shape that you are looking for. But yeah, probably the extrude is the most used tool inside of Blender for modeling. Other thing that is really useful for modeling, it's adding more edge loops. You can see that each faces has edges. And if you have more edges, you're gonna have more faces. And if you have more faces, you can create more detail. For instance, if I want to divide all these faces over here, split in two, to have the option to extrude different parts of this face, I can generate more edge loops. And to do that, I can press Ctrl R. If I press Ctrl R, you can see that you have this edge loop over here in yellow. That's saying to us that I can add a new loop. So if I click and click again, you can see that now we have a brand new edge loop. And if I go to faces, we just divide this face in two, so we can have a more precise extrude. So that's really useful, but you don't need to stop on that. So if I go in Ctrl R again, we have the option to add edge loops. But if I scroll my mouse, you can see that I generate more and more edge loops. And if I click my mouse, and now before I click again, you can see that I can place my edges whatever I want inside of this face. And if I hit ask, instead of place that I'm choosing, I'm gonna place those edges exactly in the middle of the face. And now we have a bunch of other faces that you can extrude and create a different shape. Also, other thing that you can do, for instance, I'm in the vertex mode now. I can click one vertex and then another, and then I can hit J. So now I create another edge loop that divides this face in two. So I can join vertex to create new edges that are gonna create new faces. And you can create models just doing that, extruding, dividing the faces and join faces or deleting edges and so on. So if I want to delete some edges, I can go here, select the edge, and then I'm gonna hit X. And then I can go here and dissolve edges. I'm doing that, dissolving edges, because I clean my mesh if I do that. If I go here and then instead of dissolve edges, I can go, I'm gonna hit X and go to delete edges. You can see that now we have a hole inside of your mesh. So if you want to keep your geometry but get rid of your edge, you need to dissolve the edge instead of delete it. But that's another resource. It's really useful and you can always use to create your model. Other thing regarding create new edges and manipulate your geometry, we have the cut tool. So if I go and hit K, you can see that we have this knife over here. And if I click one edge and then drag, and then click again, then hit enter, you can see that now you generate another edge. If I go here, generate another faces. So we see so far extrude and different ways to generate and manipulate edges. That's really important to generate new shapes. And let's keep moving. Other way to manipulate edges that's really important is the inset. So if I go here and click I, so I'm selecting the face and then I click I, you can see that we generate new faces, but going inwards in your shape. So that's really useful because now I can go and extrude inwards and I start creating new shapes. That's really useful when you are creating, for instance, windows and when you create doors and entries and things like that. So you can create this inset. Okay, so the next thing that I want you to do, it's a challenge. So I want you to, I'm gonna delete this one, then Shift A to create a new cube. So I want you to extrude, try to generate some kind of weird building like that. Maybe I hit Shift, so if I hold Shift and select small faces, and then I can extrude both together, and then I can go here and extrude again. I don't know, something crazy. It doesn't need to make sense. Now I want, like this face over here, I want to create a set of windows just in this floor over here. So to create a set of windows, you're gonna need to use some ways to generate new edges, and then you can use the inset to create some frames, and then you need to use the extrude. So give that a go to practice a little bit those new tools that we are learning, and then we're gonna do that together right after, and then we're gonna move to other essential tools for modeling inside of Blender. Okay, to do that, I can go here in the edge mode, hit pressing 2, and then I'm gonna go Control R. You can see that now generates a lot of edge loops. I'm gonna increase the amount of edge loops to generate several windows. Nice. Here I can go do the same thing to generate 2 loops in the horizontal direction. And if I want, I can go here, click in one edge, and then hold Alt and click again. You can see that we select the whole edge loop. That's really useful as well. And then I'm gonna press G to move, and then Z to move just in the Z axis. And then I'm gonna make my windows a little bit taller. And then I'm gonna press 3 to select the faces, and then I'm gonna start selecting the faces. So select all these faces over here, and then I think that I can do it, hit I to inset. So now I'm setting all these faces to generate the frame of the windows, and with all those windows selected, I can hit E and extrude inwards. In doing that, you can see that we generate a set of windows. That's really easy to do. We're using just these tools. And oftentimes, even you are modeling something for real, you're gonna use the exactly approach that I'm doing that. It seems like really simple, but with those simple tools, you can create really complex stuff. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna talk about, it's bevels. The bevels are important for 2 reasons. The first reason is to increase realism. So instead of create a cube, I'm going to create a cylinder. So I'm going to go here and create a cylinder. I'm going to decrease the amount of vertex from 32 to 16. Okay, the first reason that why bevel is important is to increase realism. We are not seeing often in reality anything that has this harsh transition between faces. You usually have a smoother transition between faces in reality. And when you put bevels, we replicate that. So if I go here and press Ctrl B, you can see that we generate this smoother transition between faces, and that will increase the realism in your models for sure. If I click, you can see that here we have more options, so I can increase and decrease the amount of bevels. Also, I can play with the amount of segments, of more or less segments. Doing that, you can see that you don't have this harsh transition, and that will increase the realism in your models. The other thing that's the bevel, it's really important, it's when you are working with shaded smooth and the Catmull mark subdivisions. And what the hell is that? So oftentimes we use modifiers in Blender, and one modifiers that we use a lot, it's the subdivision surface. So here is where you find the modifiers, and here is where you add modifiers. So I'm gonna go here, and for those who doesn't know what a modifier is, it's like a tool, but usually modifiers add some new characteristics to the whole model. So in this case, for instance, I'm using the subdivision surface that will increase the amount of polygons in my model. And you can see what I mean about bevels. So here on the bottom, I'm losing the overall shape of my model because there is no bevel. In here on the top, because I'm using the bevel, I still have the silhouette of a cylinder. And that happens because when you use the subdivision surface, you will do that a lot. You have an interpolation between edges and vertex in your model. And that interpolation helps us to generate a more smooth model. a more realistic model without the need to add more and more polygons to your model. So especially when you are exporting this to a game engine, it's really important, the poly count, and this subdivision surface can help you to make your model, low poly model, look like a high poly model, basically. So that's really important. The problem is because the interpolation that this modifier does, we start losing the shapes. And the way to solve that is using bevel, as we did that here on the top. So I go here and then I'm gonna disable my subdivision just for a moment. And then I'm gonna go here and then Control B and I generate a bevel. So if I go again, you can see that now you have the shape that we had before, no problem. Nice. And if I click in object mode, right click and then shade smooth, you can see that now my cylinder is really smooth. It seems like it has much more polygons that actually has. And that is really helpful because you don't need to increase by a lot your poly count to generate smooth results in your model like that. So bevels, you usually do bevels for both of these things, to use subdivision surface and have these sustain edge loops to not losing the overall form that you are creating, and also to increase the realism to avoid those hard transitions between surface. Okay guys, so if I want to apply my subdivision, I just need to go here and then I apply my subdivision. And let's talk briefly about modifiers. I'm gonna show you the modifiers that we often use, the most used ones. The subdivision surface, we're gonna use that a lot for sure, but also you have other modifiers that are equally important. For instance, the mirror. The mirror gonna mirror your object. You can see that even though I'm clicking here, nothing is happening, and that it's happening because the mirror depends the pivot position of our model or object. For instance, if I go here and then Shift A and search for any object we will do, so a cube, then I'm gonna grab this cube, and then here in the mirror object and select the cube as a reference. You can see that now we have the cube in the middle of the two objects that we are mirroring. So if I go and press G and make it taller, you can see that now you have other mirror objects. And then I need to go and move a little bit in the X direction. So now we are using this cube as a reference to mirror our objects. We oftentimes use an object as a reference, but there is a better object to mirror things, and the object is, if I go here in Shift A, you can see that you have this empty, and then you can choose the plane axis. So the empty is basically empty. It's an object, but it doesn't have any mesh on it. So it's really useful when you are have an object just as a reference. So if I go here, my empty, it's here in the origin. I'm gonna grab an G, and then I can go here and object and choose the empty. And now you can see that the empty won't appear in any render or anything like that. It's empty, but you can use as a reference to generate mirrors and other modifiers and like arrays and things like that. But especially in mirrors, they are very useful. The other thing to help to generate a reference, it's the pivot point. So if I go here and hit Control period, you can see that now we have the gizmo, similar that we have in Maya 3ds Max and also on Unreal Engine. Press G, I can move my pivot point, and then I can go and hit Control period again to leave the pivot mode. And now if I delete this mirror object, you can see that now we are using the pivot point of this model as a reference to mirror the object. So also you have this resource when you are mirror things. And a mirror is really useful for pretty much any modeling that you're gonna do, but especially environment art, when you are creating buildings and things like that, is really useful because oftentimes we have symmetry between things that we are modeling. So it's really useful to use the mirror as well. Nice. I'm gonna delete the mirror. And other modifier that's really important it's the array. So we're gonna go here, have the array, and the array gonna generate an array of the object that we are adding the modifier. So here we have some factors, and use any direction that makes sense to you, and also you can increase the amount. And we're gonna use arrays for a lot of type of models, but especially for environment art, it's really useful because you can create a set of pillars, a set of beams, you can create a set of windows, doors, or floors, or anything like that. So the array can help you to have a more systematic modeling at the same time that can save you a lot of time. And with that, I'm finishing the video, and now you know how to create models using Blender. So see you in the next video.